U.S. Army experiments with long-endurance drones, balloons in Philippines. Philippines, a barely detectable speck appears near a beaming, late-afternoon sun and then dodges behind a cloud. Soon that small speck, as it makes its slow descent, takes the form of a sleek, small unmanned aircraft. The aircraft makes a quiet, delicate landing along the runway of a remote island airfield in the Philippines in the temporarily breezeless, scorching heat. The platform, a Krauss Hamdani Aerospace K-1000, had spent the majority of the day flying above the South China Sea and collecting data for the Extended Range Sensing and Effects Company, which is part of the U.S. Army's first multi-domain task force. Here in the Philippines, the first MDTF is using the Bilateral military exercise to experiment with its structure and identify the assets that will best serve joint and coalition forces in situations where adversaries can deny regional access. The bilateral drill between the American and Philippine armed forces took place April 11th to May 9th. The ERSE company set up camp in Bosco, a volcanic island in the Baton's Island chain north of the Philippines' largest island of Luzon. On a clear day from certain high points on the island, one can see Taiwan. The company operated out of a small, air-conditioned tent directly next to the tiny commercial airport that hosts a few flights a day. The company's position was as far north as the annual exercise ever took place. Only one unit is stationed farther north where it is constructing a warehouse on the island of Itbayat. Major Seth Holt, who commands the ERSE company, told Defense News, inside his small operations center on Bosco, that he was focused on learning how his team can contribute to a flexible and easily tailorable multi-domain task force. His company is designed to provide sensing capability from the ground level within the electromagnetic spectrum up to roughly 100,000 feet, Holt said. The spectrum is a critical resource in modern conflicts, as those in control of it can manipulate communications, weapons guidance, and more. The company is made up of 3 platoons, one focused on electronic warfare, another on unmanned aircraft, and another on high-altitude capabilities such as balloons. How did troops use the drones? Inside the small operations center, soldiers assigned to the company watched monitors displaying signals of interest gathered by electronic surveillance. With another monitor, soldiers controlled the K-1000 and its payload, zooming in on areas of interest and flagging things to watch. Holt said the company, during the exercise, has been able to pass data from the drone sensors and cameras to Philippine troops, a major step in advancing interoperability between the two nations. While the K-1000 is not a program of record, the Army has been using it in a variety of experiments, including the Edge exercise and Project Convergence. The lightweight K-1000, which features solar panels on its wings, previously broke the endurance record for Class II unmanned aerial systems by flying for 76 hours. That category currently applies to drones that weigh between 21 and 55 pounds. After a roughly 8-hour mission tackling the winds at sea, the aircraft returned with 80% of its battery life, operators told Defense News at the Bosco site. The aircraft does not have landing gear and relies on 3D-printed skids that can be swapped out after they wear down. The K-1000 is also difficult to detect, with most sensors and radars mistaking it for a bird, according to Krauss engineers on site. The aircraft fits inside a standard case, and it takes users roughly 10 minutes to unload, assemble, and launch. The drone takes off from a moving vehicle as it catches the wind and becomes airborne. In Bosco, it took off from the roof of a black SUV. Despite its design, nature and physics still get in the way. Defense News observed the team decide against launching the aircraft early one morning because the winds were too strong. Krauss has developed a vertical takeoff and landing version of the fixed-wing aircraft to better tolerate windy weather and is providing some units to the U.S. Navy for evaluation. But according to Holt, endurance is sacrificed in that configuration because of the energy drain from the electric motor. The K-1000 isn't the only UAS the MDTF is evaluating. One of the ERSE company's platoons is also conducting non-flight tests of a 3D-printed small, fixed-wing UAS that was built in 5 days and designed by a soldier at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State, the headquarters of 1st MDTF. The ERSE company is also experimenting with high-altitude balloons to tackle an additional long-endurance sensing layer. One system, also not a program of record, is Urban Sky's stratospheric microballoon, which the firm says produces zero emissions. High-altitude balloons, which can hold sensors for surveillance, detection, and targeting, help the ERSE company provide networking capabilities and could eventually carry payloads, Holt said. Such platforms are gaining traction because they are easy to deploy with small units operating in austere locations, Holt noted, and the balloons themselves can prove difficult to detect. At Bilateral, the ERSE company sent soldiers familiar with operating high-altitude balloons to another site to help a Philippine civilian agency launch weather balloons, Holt added. The officer also said what his Pacific-based unit needs most in a UAS capability is something with a great deal of range and endurance, as well as a one that soldiers can deploy in large numbers to overwhelm an enemy. Additionally, Holt said he wants versatility, where payloads can be swapped or configured differently for various missions such as surveillance or network extension.
The U.S. Army established the first MDTF in 2018 as an experimental unit meant to inform the service's multi-domain operations doctrine, which the force ultimately published in 2022. The Army determined the unit's value to the force went beyond just experiments and decided to create 5 more multi-domain task forces dedicated to specific theaters.
The service has officially created 3 MDTFs in various stages of construction. The first is focused on the Indo-Pacific theater since its creation. The second is based in Europe, and the third is in Hawaii. A fourth will also be dedicated to the Pacific. A fifth, which will be based at Fort Liberty, South Carolina, does not yet have a dedicated theater. The task forces consist of multi-domain cells made up of any combination of kinetic and non-kinetic capabilities to include long-range fires battalions, multi-domain effects battalions, indirect fire protection capability battalions, and task force support battalions. At the heart of these task forces is the multi-domain effects battalions, formerly known as the Intelligence, Information, Cyber, Electronic Warfare, and Space Unit. The multi-domain effects battalions consists of 6 companies, of which the ERSE company is one. The other 5 companies focus on information dominance, space, military intelligence, signals intelligence, and Army headquarters affairs. The companies are designed to work together and complement each other's capabilities for sensing and delivering effects on targets.